We know you write books, but when did you first become interested in music?
Well, I've always loved music. Listening to it? What do you mean specifically? Interested in playing?
Yeah. Singing, playing, writing, instead of writing books.
Well, I love sound, and just like I love words, words are musical, and I love sound. I remember being a very little girl and taking a stick and going along metal railings, with the stick, and listening to the sound, and then hitting a dustbin garbage can. Sorry, have to translate. Lid, and listening to all the different sounds, hollow, um, the opposite of hollow. I can't think of the word, but just the different sounds that things made. Whether it was water, something hard, and to me it was all musical. But the moment I had a moment, and we didn't have a car, and so whenever we wanted to go somewhere, most people didn't have cars where I grew up and when I grew up a long time ago, and I come from a socialist country, and people there most people weren't well-to-do, so we didn't have a car. So when we were going anywhere, we borrowed a relative's car, Archie's car, and they had a radio. We didn't have a radio at home, so I never listened to the radio at home. But they had on in the car the most glorious music I'd ever heard. And I'd heard music before, and I said to my mother, what is it? What is that? And she said, my mother hated violins. And she said, that's a violin, she says. And my dad said, that's Itzhak Perlman. He said, he's the world's finest violinist, and that was his opinion. And I listened to him, and I said, I have to play that. Can anybody play that? I have to play that. And my mother said, absolutely not. But my dad is a musician, and he's a trumpet player. He's actually my stepfather, but he plays trumpet to this day, and he's still with us. God bless him. And he said I could, so they must have talked it out, when I wasn't around. And because they didn't argue in front of children, and children don't answer back, and I come from that upbringing. And so I played a school violin I actually wanted to play the cello, because when I went to find out about this magical violin that I'd heard, excuse me, my eyes tearing a little bit, they do that. It's part of the legal blindness fun and games. And so anyway, when I went to find out, because the school gave you free instruments and free lessons and that sort of thing, you got a lot of things for free, which weren't really free. You paid for them in taxes, but I didn't know that then. And so I heard a cello, and I love the sound of a cello. If I were going to be an instrument, it would be a cello in terms of personality. But they didn't give me one. They gave me a violin. And I was actually really happy. And I went home and I practiced and practiced and practiced. And I sounded terrible. But it didn't take long. And for about a year after that, I'd played, a year is a long time when you're 7. And I had really concentrated on getting the sound out of this, drawing the sound out of this that I'd heard on the radio. Obviously hadn't quite made it when I was 7. But there was this old man who died. This is a story that goes with this. Do you want to?
Yeah.
Because there was this old man who was dying, and he had a Stradivarius violin. And he didn't want to sell it, apparently. I don't really know the details. I never was told the details. But he wanted someone to have it who he thought would make good use of it and get good use out of it. And my teacher, for reasons that I never really did know, told my mother that she wanted me to have it, that she thought that I was going to do something with music, and she knew I would do something with music. And but there was a token £5 required. That's a lot of money for a family, particularly. We were supposed to be poor. We were poor. We lived in tenements and whatever. But my mom came up with the £5, and I got this Stradivarius violin. I know, to me, it was priceless. I had no idea how its actual worth in terms of dollars and cents, but the sound that it made was just like the radio. And it wasn't that hard to produce. It still wasn't Itzhak Perlman for me. I mean, I still wasn't, but I never put it down. I never put it down for years. It was just an appendage. And so I had a Stradivarius violin for years, and I never let it out of my sight, because I had to take it every day, because the kids would march up the stairs. You had to, everything was march, march, march. Everything is military style, you know, so they'd march, 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 march up the stairs, and there were 3 of us downstairs playing violin and somebody on the piano, and we'd play marching things, and they'd march up the stairs. Did that 3 times a day. While they did that, the recess, you call it recess?
Right.
We called it playtime, but whatever. And the school janitor made me leave my violin downstairs, and I never did that. I always took it with me. I was allowed to take it with me to my class, but you don't answer back where I come from. And I didn't like it, but I did what I was told, and I left it there. And when I came back, it wasn't there. And by that time, I was 13, going on 14, and I was devastated. I was just devastated that it wasn't there anymore. And I don't know what happened. To this day, I have my own thoughts, but I did have, my uncle had left. My uncle was a captain, a sea captain with the Royal Navy, and he had left a guitar at our house with 3 strings on it. And I didn't know enough about guitars or anything to not know you needed the whole 6. I just went and bought another 3, and I started making up classical pieces on a steel string guitar. And that's how I got to switch from violin to guitar, and that's how I became interested. I was always interested in music, but that's how I started to play.